If you could title the 3 chapters of your life, childhood, young adulthood, and middle adulthood, how would you title them each, and why, my friend?
It wasn't a sport that I didn't want to play, and I was such a competitor. I wanted to be the best at it, which reminds me of my first children's book called I Told You I Can Play. I had an older brother, 2.5 years older than me, that would never let me play with the older boys because he was afraid I would get hurt. And I finally got my opportunity, and I scored a touchdown against the older boys. So I got drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals my junior year and signed on the condition that I could play my redshirt senior year in football because I wanted to live out that dream. And fortunately, things worked out great. But we always have adversity and obstacles in our lives. And Mark, you know, the Senior Bowl is one of the most prestigious bowl games there is to up your value. In the first quarter of that Senior Bowl, I'm running across the field to make the big hit on Cleveland Gary, University of Miami, and I break my leg and dislocate my ankle. NFL doctor told me that the injury was so severe that they didn't think that I would be able to play in the NFL. And Buffalo took a chance on me in the 7th round. I was actually running full speed ahead 3 months after the surgery, which was incredible. I showed up at training camp for Buffalo, and you know those Buffalo Bills, their defense was phenomenal. Marv Levy told me I was the 46th man on a 45-man roster. And I didn't leave the parking lot, got a call from my agent, and there I was in Atlanta with Deion Sanders and Atlanta Falcons, and I ended up starting 3 years for the Falcons. And to share my story with kids today, and we know literacy is such a huge problem, it just, you know, that's what I'm here for. That's my mission.
Jim Brunzell will make a case for why the Robert Kennedy assassination is the biggest mystery in our country's history.
Bobby Kennedy, who was a huge favorite to win the 1964 presidential election, and I believe he was ahead of everybody. And then I think this was decided in California, and that night after he had won this primary, he was going through the kitchen at this hotel in Hollywood, and bang, 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 there was a couple shots, and the next thing you know, Bobby Kennedy was laying on his back, bleeding from his head. But to make a long story short, the truth about Bobby Kennedy's assassination was that Sirhan didn't kill him. There was autopsy reports were questioned. Yeah, I've probably spent more time reading about the Kennedy assassination ever since I saw Mark Lane in college. There is more evidence right now that he was killed as a result of his lack of air support for the Bay of Pigs. And when all the exiled Cubans got shot down and put in prison by Castro. And at the same time, the mob was pissed off at Kennedy because they wanted him to have the air supply, or come down and strafe and bomb, because their casinos, they lost all their casinos.
But if you could pick one moment in your career that could inspire a deceased historical figure during a downtime in their life, which career moment of yours would you select and why? Which deceased historical figure would you be hoping to inspire and why?
But it was something that happened to me before I even got, known on the football field. I went back and forth between California and Nebraska. Going out there with my brother, my 2 older brothers and older sister, we had stopped in Arizona just for a pit stop, Greyhound pit stop, as usual. And my mom did notice that I was acting weird, like I was dehydrated, like I was coughing. It was something that tipped her off. My sister told me the story where she took me to the local hospital where we were near and had me checked into emergency, and the doctor, examined me, hit me with some IVs. I guess I was dehydrated. He came out from my room and told my mom, I don't know what tipped you off to get your son, your young 2-year-old son, into the hospital, but I'm glad you did it, because if you didn't, he probably would have died from dehydration. And then 8-year-old to 15, 14-year-old mine, I remember doing things where my mom and dad would be like, you're a different kid. Or my brothers be like, you do things a little, like, how'd you figure out to do that or say that to your teammate? And then I remember my first season in Little League football, and we had this crosstown rival team named Kingswood. They were well coached. They always kicked everybody's butt. And that's all I heard about during this training camp. So I got voted team captain. And from that game, we ended up losing that game, but we lost in double overtime by 1 point. And I said this to my teammates. I said, look, in my head, I'm ready to go undefeated because we owe them a punch in the gut too. I say in the long and short of it, my teammates, they took heed to it. We went 11-0, and we ended up beating that team in the championship game for the city championship, Little League City Championship, 42-13.
Mick Garris, of course, will make a case for Abbott and Costello. Meet Frankenstein is the most rewatchable movie of all time.
Every studio in the 30s was known for a particular genre. Warner Brothers was crime, MGM was musicals and big Technicolor extravaganzas. Universal was monsters. In 1925-27, they made Hunchback of Notre Dame and Phantom of the Opera. 1931 was Dracula and Frankenstein, then came Bride of Frankenstein. And in 1948, along came Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Well, in 1941, Abbott and Costello's Buck Privates was Universal's biggest box office success of the year. They were huge. They were hit after hit after hit all through the 40s. But by 1948, they were growing a bit threadbare in the public's observation. So the studio decided they'd been making these monster rallies, Ghost of Frankenstein, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, where it's see the mummy, see Frankenstein's monster, see the Wolfman, see all of them in one movie. Well, the very last one to be made was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So they were two franchises nearing the end of their sell-by dates. And it is so much fun, and it's so gleeful. I was asked by the Cinematheque last Halloween to choose a black and white movie to show to the audience. And I chose Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It was sold out. It was a crowd from 5-year-olds through 70-year-olds, and every joke landed, every scare jumped. They were cheering, and it was black and white, and it put lie to the fable that no young people will watch black and white movies. It's so friendly, but scares are scary. The sets are magnificent. The makeups were done by Bud Westmore, who became the head of the Universal Studios makeup department, and they're beautiful renditions of the original Jack Pierce makeups from the original 1931 Frankenstein and Dracula.
Very cool.